Most men fail in relationships, not because they lack love, money, or good intentions, but because they fundamentally misunderstand female nature. For centuries, women have evolved psychological and biological mechanisms designed to secure survival and reproduction. These instincts are not evil or manipulative in themselves. They are simply part of human evolution. Yet for the modern man who enters relationships blindly, they become invisible forces that dictate success or failure. Female nature is not what society tells you, soft, innocent, and purely emotional. It is a complex combination of hypergamy, emotional volatility, unconscious testing, and careful image management. If you do not learn to see these forces clearly, you will be controlled by them. But once you understand them, you unlock a new level of power, the ability to lead, to stand firm, and to create relationships on your terms. Number 1, hypergamy, the core instinct of female nature. At the very heart of female nature lies hypergamy, the evolutionary instinct that drives women to seek partners of higher value than themselves. It is not a preference, not a social trend, and not a cultural invention. It is biology. For thousands of years, women's survival depended on their ability to secure protection, resources, and strong genetic material for their offspring. A woman who chose a weak or incapable mate risked not only her own survival, but also the survival of her children. Nature, therefore, coded into the female psyche a relentless drive. Always trade up, if possible. This explains why women are naturally drawn to men who demonstrate status, confidence, competence, and dominance. It is not about superficial wealth alone. It is about what wealth symbolizes: security, influence, and the ability to provide. Even in modern times, where women may earn their own income, hypergamy still operates beneath the surface. A woman may respect her career, but she instinctively respects a man whose value surpasses hers. If she feels she has settled down with someone beneath her level, resentment eventually builds, attraction dies, and the relationship collapses. Hypergamy also explains why women are rarely satisfied with stagnation. A man who was once attractive due to ambition and drive can lose his value if he becomes complacent, passive, or dependent. Women are not attracted to potential that fades. They are attracted to growth, to the constant pursuit of higher ground. This is why a man cannot stop improving himself once he has won a woman. The moment he stops climbing, she starts questioning. For men who do not understand hypergamy, relationships feel confusing and unfair. They think, why isn't love enough? Why does she need me to be stronger, more successful, more ambitious? The answer is brutally simple. Love without respect is nothing, and respect in a woman's eyes is inseparable from her perception of your value. To ignore this reality is to live in delusion. It is important to emphasize, hypergamy does not make women shallow or malicious. It is not a conspiracy. It is survival programming. Just as men are biologically wired to be visually attracted to youth and fertility, women are wired to be attracted to strength and higher status. These instincts operate whether or not we consciously acknowledge them. For the modern man, the lesson is clear. Do not resent hypergamy, but adapt to it. Complaining that women are never satisfied or that they always want more only reveals weakness. The only viable strategy is to embrace constant growth, physically, mentally, financially, and socially. The man who continuously upgrades himself will always remain desirable, not because he panders to female demands, but because he embodies the very essence of what female nature is programmed to seek. Hypergamy is not the enemy. For the strong man, it is the greatest ally. It forces him never to settle, never to grow stagnant, and never to lose his edge. If you understand this law and live by it, you will never be surprised by women's behavior. Instead, you will anticipate it, master it, and position yourself as the man who is always chosen, never abandoned. Number 2, the contradiction between words and actions. One of the most confusing aspects of female nature for men is the constant contradiction between what women say and what they actually do. Men, by their nature, tend to take words at face value. If someone says they want honesty, kindness, or stability, most men assume that is exactly what they desire and will reward. But with women, words often reflect social conditioning rather than raw instinct, while actions reveal the deeper truth of attraction. Consider the classic example. When asked what they want in a man, many women will list traits like kindness, sensitivity, or reliability. These are socially safe answers, the qualities that earn approval from friends, family, and society. Yet in practice, their actions often betray different preferences. They find themselves irresistibly drawn to men who display dominance, ambition, confidence, even traits that society might label as arrogant or dangerous. While they may insist that nice guys are what they are looking for, their dating history often tells another story. This contradiction is not hypocrisy in the deliberate sense. It is the clash between conscious belief and unconscious instinct. On the conscious level, a woman may genuinely believe she values gentleness above all, but at the unconscious level, the level wired for survival, she feels attraction to men who embody strength, unpredictability, and leadership. This is why so many men experience the frustration of being the good guy, who does everything right only to be ignored or friend-zoned. They listen to her words instead of watching her actions. Another layer of this contradiction is the shifting context. A woman may say she wants stability, but in the early stages of attraction, she will often chase excitement and emotional highs. Later, when she feels secure, she may emphasize the need for comfort and loyalty. Female desires are not static. They fluctuate depending on her stage of life, her environment, and her options. This fluidity makes it essential for men to look beyond words and focus on consistent behavioral patterns. For men, the lesson is clear. Never take a woman's words as absolute truth. Always measure them against her actions. If her words say she wants commitment, but her actions show constant distraction or chasing excitement, trust the actions. If she claims to value humility, but invests her attention in bold, dominant men, trust the actions. Actions are the language of instinct. Words are the language of social expectation. Understanding this contradiction gives men an edge. Instead of being blindsided by disappointment, they learn to observe with detachment. They stop wasting energy on trying to meet verbal checklists and instead focus on embodying the traits that consistently spark real attraction. This is not cynicism. It is realism. The man who recognizes this paradox will stop asking, "Why do women say one thing and do another?" and instead realize what she does is who she really is. Once he accepts this, he no longer feels betrayed by the gap between promises and behavior. He simply sees it as part of female nature, an evolutionary feature, not a flaw. And with this clarity, He positions himself as the man who reads beneath the surface, who cannot be misled, and who therefore holds the advantage in the relationship dynamic. Number 3. Shit tests. The hidden mechanism of female testing. Every man who has dealt with women has experienced it, though few recognize it. The infamous shit test. These are subtle, sometimes irritating challenges that women throw at men. Questions, remarks, or behaviors designed not to humiliate, but to test his strength. To the unprepared man, these tests feel like disrespect or nagging. But in truth, they are unconscious strategies by which women measure a man's confidence, emotional stability, and leadership. Why do women test? The answer is rooted in survival. For thousands of years, a woman's safety depended on attaching herself to a man capable of withstanding pressure. Life was full of threats: wild animals, rival tribes, scarcity of resources. A man who crumbled under stress endangered not only himself, but also the woman and her offspring. Therefore, women evolved a psychological mechanism, constantly probing, pushing, and challenging, to ensure the man she chooses truly has strength. Shit tests appear in countless forms. A woman might make a sarcastic remark about your appearance, question your ambition, tease you about other women, or challenge your authority in public. At times, it may be as simple as giving you the silent treatment or creating drama out of nothing. To the logical male mind, this behavior seems irrational. Why is she causing problems when everything is fine? But from her perspective, the drama itself is the test. It is pressure applied to see whether you remain calm or collapse. The key to surviving these tests lies not in defending yourself or over-explaining. In fact, the more you justify, the weaker you appear. If you take the test too seriously, you fail. The correct response is calm detachment, humor, or unshakable confidence. A witty remark, a playful tease, or simply refusing to be rattled communicates far more value than an elaborate defense ever could. Remember, women are not looking for perfect answers. They are looking for a man whose frame cannot be broken. Failing a shit test has consequences. If you react with anger, insecurity, or desperation, she instinctively loses attraction. In her mind, you have proven unfit for leadership. But passing the test has the opposite effect. It deepens her respect and amplifies attraction. She sees you as a man who cannot be manipulated by emotions, a man whose presence is strong enough to weather storms. It is essential to understand that women often test unconsciously. They are not plotting in secret or maliciously setting traps. Just as a man cannot help but be visually drawn to beauty, a woman cannot help but test the strength of a man's character. It is part of her nature. The man who understands this truth does not resent the tests. He welcomes them as opportunities to display his composure and dominance. Ultimately, shit tests are not obstacles, but gateways. They separate the weak from the strong, the uncertain from the decisive. Every time you pass one, you reinforce your role as the leader in the relationship. Every time you fail, you slip further into irrelevance. Once a man learns to master this dynamic, he stops seeing female challenges as problems and starts seeing them as the natural rhythm of attraction, a rhythm that only the strongest men can dance to. Number 4. Emotional volatility and cycles. One of the most misunderstood dimensions of female nature is emotional volatility. The rapid shifts in mood, perception, and behavior that often leave men bewildered. Men, by nature, tend to be more linear in their emotions. Once they decide on something, their mood generally stabilizes around it. Women, however, are biologically wired to operate on cycles, influenced by hormonal changes, reproductive rhythms, and heightened sensitivity to social dynamics. To men, this appears as unpredictability. To women, it is simply their natural state. Biology plays a central role. The female hormonal cycle, with its monthly fluctuations, has a direct impact on emotions, energy, and attraction. At certain points, a woman may feel nurturing and affectionate, while at others, she may become restless, irritable, or even cold. This volatility is not a flaw. It is a mechanism tied to reproduction. A woman must be highly sensitive to her environment to make quick adjustments for survival. Being overly stable, ironically, would have been dangerous in the ancestral past, where circumstances changed rapidly and demanded flexibility. The problem arises when men project their own emotional logic onto women. A man thinks if she was happy yesterday, she should be happy today. But for women, emotions are waves, not straight lines. She can adore you in the morning and be distant in the evening without any logical reason that a man can grasp. Many men make the fatal mistake of chasing explanations, asking, "What's wrong? Did I do something?" In doing so, they show weakness, signaling that her emotions control them. The correct approach is not to resist her volatility or to demand consistency, but to provide stability through your own frame. A man who is emotionally grounded becomes the anchor in her storm. When she fluctuates, he does not fluctuate with her. When she lashes out, he remains calm. When she withdraws, he does not panic. This steadiness communicates security at the deepest level. It tells her unconscious mind, this man can handle chaos. This man can lead even when the world is unstable. Paradoxically, women often respect and are more attracted to men who are least affected by their emotional swings. If you mirror her volatility, you amplify the chaos and lose her respect. If you stand firm, she eventually gravitates back to you, often with stronger attraction than before. Understanding emotional cycles also prevents men from personalizing female behavior. When you realize that her mood swings are not always about you, you stop reacting defensively. Instead of taking every cold word as rejection, you recognize it as part of her rhythm. This perspective saves countless relationships from unnecessary conflict. The ultimate lesson: you cannot control a woman's emotions, but you can control your response to them. If you expect stability from her, you will be perpetually frustrated. But if you embody stability yourself, you become the rare constant in her ever-shifting world. And in that constancy lies your true power, the ability to lead, attract, and retain her respect, regardless of her emotional storms. Number 5, the instinct of concealment and image control. Another critical element of female nature is the instinct to conceal and manage their image. Unlike men, who often present themselves more directly, women have evolved to protect their social reputation and maintain control by carefully shaping how they are perceived. This is not mere vanity, it is survival. For most of human history, a woman's value in her community and her chances of securing a high-value partner depended on her reputation. A single misstep could damage her standing, reduce her desirability, and put her future at risk. This survival pressure created a powerful instinct. Women rarely reveal the entirety of their thoughts desires, or past experiences openly. Instead, they present a version of themselves optimized for social approval and male selection. A woman may downplay her past relationships, exaggerate her innocence, or adopt behaviors that align with cultural expectations of femininity. This concealment is not necessarily malicious, it is strategic. She understands, often unconsciously, that mystery protects her value. One of the most visible forms of this instinct is social image management. Women are acutely aware of how they appear in the eyes of others, especially potential partners and rivals. They are more likely than men to curate their appearance, control their narratives, and emphasize selective aspects of their identity. This is why women may say, "I'm not like other girls," or claim qualities that set them apart, even if those claims are only partially true. The goal is always to enhance perceived uniqueness and value. To the untrained man, this creates confusion. He assumes that what she says is what she truly is. He trusts words over patterns. But a wiser man understands that women will always filter what they reveal. Therefore, he does not cling to her narratives. He observes her consistency over time. He does not ask, "What does she say about herself?" but instead, "How do her actions align with reality?" This instinct also extends to how women handle conflict. Many prefer indirect communication, hints, subtlety, or emotional cues, rather than blunt confrontation. By keeping things ambiguous, they maintain control of the situation and avoid losing face. The concealment creates plausible deniability. If challenged, she can always retreat with, "I never said that," or "You misunderstood me." For men who demand clear answers, this can feel frustrating. But once you see it as part of female nature, it becomes less of a puzzle and more of a predictable pattern. Understanding this instinct does not mean condemning women. In fact, it reveals their remarkable adaptability. Where men rely on overt strength, women rely on subtlety, strategy, and image control. The lesson for men is not to become cynical, but to become discerning. Instead of being deceived by appearances, you learn to read beneath the surface. Instead of expecting full transparency, you accept that concealment is part of the dance. Ultimately, the instinct of concealment is neither good nor bad. It is simply natural. A wise man does not waste energy demanding brutal honesty. He sharpens his ability to observe. He knows that what is hidden often speaks louder than what is revealed. And in mastering this understanding, he positions himself above the illusions, seeing women not as mysterious enigmas, but as predictable players in the ancient game of survival and attraction. To understand female nature is not to condemn it, but to see it clearly without illusion. Hypergamy, contradictions between words and actions, unconscious tests, emotional volatility, and the instinct of concealment. These are not flaws, but evolutionary mechanisms shaped for survival. Men who remain blind to these realities are constantly confused, disappointed, and controlled by dynamics they cannot name. They cling to romantic myths, expecting stability where volatility is natural, or honesty where concealment is instinctive. But the man who accepts female nature as it is gains power. He no longer wastes energy fighting what cannot be changed. Instead, he adapts. He becomes the anchor in chaos, the leader in uncertainty, and the man women instinctively respect. His strength lies not in trying to control women, but in mastering himself, his frame, his growth, his vision. The truth is simple. You cannot rewrite female nature. but you can decide how to engage with it. And in making that choice, you transform from the man who is tested, manipulated, and discarded into the man who is admired, desired, and followed. That is the essence of power in relationships. Not domination, but mastery of reality.